Ethan Carter had always been a man of principle. A decorated military veteran turned respected city official by day, and a devoted restorer of classic cars by night, Ethan's vacation home in the serene outskirts was a sanctuary, a place where he could escape the noise of bureaucracy and immerse himself in nostalgia. Nestled among old oak trees and bordered by a gently winding creek, the property was more than wood and stone to him. It was a canvas for freedom and self-expression. But that freedom was about to be challenged. At the center of the brewing storm was Karen, self-appointed as the strict guardian of neighborhood decorum and the unofficial queen of a local homeowners association, HOA. Karen, with her perfectly coiffed hair and an ever-present air of superiority, ran the HOA with an iron fist. For her, every lamppost, every blade of grass, and even every porch light had to be in strict compliance with her idea of community standards. It all began on a breezy autumn morning when Ethan stepped outside to enjoy his early coffee ritual. That was when he first encountered Karen. With a crisp clipboard in hand, Karen fixed him with a disapproving stare and declared, in a tone that brooked no argument, that his choice of porch lighting, bright, modern, and uniquely personal, was a flagrant violation of the neighborhood aesthetic. Ethan's surprise quickly shifted to disbelief as Karen handed him a final warning notice. "I don't recall ever agreeing to these draconian rules," Ethan thought, his mind racing as he recalled the countless evenings spent laughing and sharing stories with neighbors, until the HOA's overreach began. This wasn't just a minor misunderstanding. It was an outright challenge to his autonomy. With his vacation home embodying the spirit of freedom and individuality, Ethan could not, and would not, bow down to Karen's demands. As the confrontation escalated, the tension between Ethan's independent lifestyle and the oppressive reach of the HOA became impossible to ignore. Karen's smug satisfaction in enforcing arbitrary rules clashed with Ethan's deep-seated belief in personal freedom. Their first clash was a harbinger of illegal personal and public battles that would soon rock the community. The next day, as a pale sunrise cast long shadows over the manicured lawns, Ethan found an envelope taped to his front door. Inside was a $750 fine, an accusation that his porch lights violated an obscure community light regulation. Karen stood nearby, arms crossed in self-satisfied triumph, her voice dripping with condescension. "The rules apply to everyone, Ethan." Undeterred, Ethan calmly read the notice and, with the precision of a seasoned official, began drafting a formal complaint. He cited local zoning ordinances and municipal regulations that made the HOA's edict nothing more than a charade. Yet Karen was ready with a counterattack. Within hours, the city's inspectors arrived at his property, spurred by a wave of anonymous complaints that suspiciously paralleled the day's fine. It became clear that Karen was using every tool at her disposal, calling in inspectors, coercing board members, and even hinting at involving legal authorities to force compliance. But every move she made only reinforced Ethan's resolve. With each fine and legal threat, he meticulously gathered evidence, documented interactions, and prepared for a battle that was rapidly evolving from a petty dispute into a full-blown crusade against corruption. The board members, initially cowed by Karen's authority, began to murmur amongst themselves. Whispers of irregularities and unfair practices started to ripple through the community. Ethan's quiet defiance was sowing seeds of doubt about the integrity of the HOA's operations. In that charged atmosphere, the stage was set for a clash that would pit one man's conscience against an institution built on entitlement. Over the following weeks, Karen's tactics grew increasingly audacious. Not content with fines and warnings, she began concocting false violations, fabricating threats of eviction, and even hinting at seizing properties under the guise of protecting the community. Rumors swirled through the neighborhood about secret donations to the HOA and hush money that made fines vanish without trace. Ethan, determined to uncover the truth, took a closer look at the inner workings of the association. Late one evening, a soft-spoken board member, with guilt etched in his eyes, confided in him about Karen's misuse of funds. Money meant for community projects was being diverted to fund personal luxuries. With his city official experience, Ethan knew the legal framework inside and out. He set up discrete cameras and started to document every irregularity, every unaccountable transaction. Neighbors began to share their own experiences. Stories of unexplained fees, secret meetings held in closed rooms, and whispered warnings when someone dared defy Karen's edicts. As Ethan pieced together the evidence, it became increasingly clear that the HOA was a hotbed of corruption, with Karen as its unchallenged ringmaster. The growing tension in the community was palpable. What started as a personal dispute had now ignited collective outrage. Every conversation at the local diner, every heated exchange at community gatherings, fed into the momentum of Ethan's counterattack. It was no longer just about porch lights or arbitrary fines. It was about reclaiming dignity and fairness in a neighborhood that had long suffered under tyrannical oversight. One fateful morning, Ethan awoke to an alarming sight. Heavy machinery parked at the edge of his driveway, and workers busily digging into his property. Karen's explanation was preposterous, a claim that the HOA was expanding sidewalks for the community's benefit. But Ethan knew better. Grabbing a file full of legal documents and zoning ordinances, he stormed into the next HOA meeting, determined to confront the absurdity head-on. In the packed meeting room, the atmosphere grew electric. As Ethan methodically laid out the evidence, blueprints, permits, and recorded conversations, he revealed that the HOA had no jurisdiction over his private property. His words were met with a mixture of astonishment and relief. Several board members, emboldened by his courage and irrefutable evidence, began to voice their doubts about Karen's long-held authority. Karen, however, refused to yield. Her face flushed with indignation. She tried to distract the crowd with more half-truths and threats of lawsuits. But the tide had turned. Public sentiment was clearly on Ethan's side. With community members rallying behind him and demanding accountability, Karen's position became increasingly untenable. Ethan's counterattack was swift and legal. He filed complaints with higher authorities and called on local media to shine a light on the HOA's overreach. The once untouchable Karen was now on the defensive, forced to confront the very real possibility that her empire of arbitrary rules might soon crumble. Desperation drove Karen to one last extreme measure. With her authority waning and public support shifting, she sought to reassert control by involving the police. One evening, Karen dialed the emergency services, falsely reporting that Ethan's brilliant porch lights were causing a public disturbance that endangered the neighborhood's well-being. When the officers arrived, Ethan calmly presented his city official badge and the documented evidence of the HOA's abuse of power. The situation quickly turned. The officers, initially ready to respond to Karen's complaint, grew skeptical as Ethan's well-organized dossier left little room for doubt. Meanwhile, Karen, undeterred, secretly hired a private investigator to unearth any damning evidence against Ethan, an act that would soon backfire spectacularly. Late one night, as Ethan reviewed the security footage from his home, he caught a clear image of the investigator sneaking around his garage. With the footage in hand, Ethan knew that this covert operation was the final nail in Karen's corrupt agenda. At the next HOA meeting, now teeming with neighbors, board members, and local reporters, Ethan played the incriminating footage. The room fell silent as every eye focused on the screen. In that moment, Karen's carefully constructed facade shattered completely. The evidence of her illegal tactics was undeniable. Public opinion shifted irrevocably. Karen was exposed not just as an overzealous enforcer, but as a manipulator willing to break the law to hold on to power. In the wake of Ethan's relentless expose, the community's mood shifted dramatically. The evidence of the HOA's misdeeds had spread like wildfire, shared at local cafes, posted on neighborhood forums, and even broadcasted by a regional news station. The collective outrage of the homeowners culminated in an emergency meeting that left no one indifferent. The air in the town hall was thick with anticipation as residents, clutching printouts of Ethan's documentation, demanded accountability and transparency from those who had long ruled their lives with an iron fist. At the heart of the meeting was a dramatic showdown. Karen, once the undisputed enforcer of arbitrary rules, now found herself isolated and outnumbered. The meeting began in tense silence, but quickly escalated as residents voiced their long-suppressed grievances. Heated debates filled the room, with several community members recounting personal tales of fines, threats, and the emotional toll of the HOA's overreach. Each testimony painted a vivid picture of a regime that had strayed far from its original purpose, transforming from a community service to a tool of intimidation. Under the weight of overwhelming opposition, a vote was called. With nearly every homeowner in favor, Karen was formally removed from the HOA board. The decision was a watershed moment, one that marked not only the downfall of an abusive leader, but also the reclamation of the community's voice. In the days that followed, local authorities wasted no time launching an official investigation into the HOA's practices. The inquiry, bolstered by Ethan's meticulously gathered evidence, revealed a pattern of misconduct. Fines levied without legal basis, unauthorized use of funds, and a blatant abuse of power that extended far beyond the confines of community regulations. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that Karen's influence had been maintained through fear and manipulation. With her removal, the foundation of the corrupt system began to crumble. Several board members, once complicit in Karen's schemes, found themselves facing legal scrutiny. Municipal regulators stepped in, issuing hefty fines against the HOA for enforcing rules that had no statutory backing. What had once been an omnipotent force in the neighborhood was now under the relentless gaze of the law. For Ethan, the victory was as bittersweet as it was monumental. The personal toll of the battle had been immense. His vacation home, a symbol of peace, freedom, and a life lived on his own terms, had been at the center of the assault by a corrupt institution. Yet, as he stood on his porch each morning, savoring the warm light of dawn and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, he could not help but feel a deep sense of pride. The bright glow of his porch lights was no longer a source of contention, but a beacon of justice, a daily reminder that standing up for what was right could dismantle even the most deeply entrenched systems of abuse. Ethan's journey from reluctant target to determined reformer had inspired his neighbors to reclaim their autonomy. Community members who had once lived in silent fear now gathered to celebrate their regained freedoms. The neighborhood, once divided by arbitrary rules and secret fines, was slowly but surely healing. New bonds were forged over shared meals, community barbecues, and informal meetings at local parks. The specter of Karen's tyranny had given way to a collective resolve to uphold fairness and mutual respect. In a symbolic twist of fate, just weeks after her removal, Karen's personal life began to unravel. The very tactics she had employed to assert her dominance, blackmail, intimidation, and the spreading of false rumors, returned to haunt her. Her once pristine reputation was tarnished beyond repair. Gossip spread that her personal finances were in disarray. Overdue bills turned into public knowledge, and her efforts to secure any semblance of respect within the community evaporated. It wasn't long before whispers of her impending downfall reached every corner of the neighborhood. As the legal proceedings against the HOA gained momentum, the domino effect on Karen's personal standing was undeniable. Board members who had remained silent under her regime now distanced themselves, and several found themselves subject to their own investigations for alleged financial improprieties. The community's unity had not only dismantled the corrupt leadership, but also laid bare the systemic failures that had allowed such abuse to thrive. Ethan watched these developments with a mix of relief and solemn satisfaction. The battle had been arduous and fraught with personal sacrifices, but the ultimate collapse of the tyrannical HOA marked a turning point for everyone involved. His victory was not one of personal vengeance, but of a broader reclaiming of dignity and justice for all homeowners. Each day, as he sipped his coffee on his now unassailable porch, Ethan was reminded of the power of collective action and the enduring truth that no institution is too powerful to be held accountable. In that quiet morning light, amid the laughter and chatter of a newly liberated neighborhood, the echoes of a dark chapter faded into memory. The collapse of the corrupt HOA and Karen's dramatic downfall served as a testament to the strength of community and the timeless principle that fairness and justice will always prevail over tyranny and corruption. As the scandal intensified, the full force of the law began to close in on the HOA. What once was a group operating in the shadows now found itself illuminated under the harsh glare of legal scrutiny. Local authorities, galvanized by the overwhelming evidence presented by Ethan and an empowered community, launched a comprehensive investigation into the association's questionable practices. In a series of rapid-fire developments, municipal regulators announced that the HOA had not only overstepped its authority, but had also engaged in unauthorized financial maneuvers. Detailed audits revealed that fines had been imposed without proper legal backing, and that funds meant for community improvements were being funneled into private accounts. The investigation uncovered a labyrinth of fraudulent activities, from falsified violation reports to unapproved construction projects, all orchestrated to justify the arbitrary exercise of power. Legal proceedings soon followed. A dedicated task force of local law enforcement and financial investigators was assembled, and key board members were called in for questioning. Their testimonies painted a damning picture of systematic abuse, revealing that the HOA's operations had long strayed from their original mandate of serving the community. The evidence was so overwhelming that several board members, previously seen as mere functionaries under Karen's tyrannical rule, were charged with multiple counts of fraud and mismanagement. Ethan played an instrumental role in this legal battle. Drawing upon his background as a city official, he ensured that every piece of evidence, from recorded conversations to meticulously logged fines, was submitted to the authorities. His unwavering commitment to transparency not only bolstered the case against the HOA, but also inspired other homeowners to come forward with their own accounts of harassment and overreach. This collective action transformed what had been an isolated dispute into a landmark class action lawsuit that represented the grievances of the entire community. The court proceedings quickly garnered significant public attention. In a series of public hearings, the judges laid bare the extent of the HOA's violations, citing the lack of any statutory support for many of the fines and restrictions that had been imposed. The courtroom buzzed with the testimonies of relieved residents, each recounting how the HOA's heavy-handed tactics had upended their lives. As the legal battle unfolded, the narrative shifted from one of isolated abuses to a systemic failure of governance, a failure that had allowed corruption to fester unchecked. Ultimately, the ruling was unequivocal. The HOA was slapped with substantial fines and ordered to reimburse homeowners for the undue financial and emotional burdens inflicted upon them. Moreover, the court mandated a complete overhaul of the association's governance structure, ensuring that future operations would be transparent, accountable, and strictly within the bounds of the law. The verdict was not just a legal victory. It was a resounding affirmation of the community's right to self-governance and respect. In the aftermath of the ruling, the neighborhood began to heal. The legal consequences imposed on the HOA sent a powerful message that no organization was above the law. For Ethan and his neighbors, this victory was both vindication and liberation. It was a turning point that restored trust in local governance and reinforced the belief that collective action and civic responsibility could triumph over entrenched corruption. Standing amidst the calm that followed the storm, Ethan reflected on the journey that had led to this moment. The legal defeat of the HOA was more than a personal win. It was a testament to the power of community unity and the unyielding pursuit of justice. Every legal document filed, every testimony given, and every fine levied had contributed to dismantling a structure built on exploitation and fear. In that transformative period, as the neighborhood slowly reclaimed its dignity and future, the echoes of a legal battle served as a reminder. When a community stands together, the rule of law prevails, ensuring that justice and fairness are never compromised by those who seek to govern through intimidation and deceit. As the legal battles raged on and the HOA's corruption was exposed, Karen's personal world began to unravel. The persona she had so meticulously built, a figure of authority and untouchable power, crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny and legal repercussions. Once the face of the oppressive board, Karen now found herself isolated, her credibility in tatters, and her reputation marred by scandal. Rumors that had long circulated in hushed tones were now confirmed by documented evidence. Details of her unauthorized financial maneuvers, misappropriated funds, and manipulative tactics were splashed across local news outlets and social media. The community that once feared her now viewed her with contempt, and even those who had once been indifferent could not ignore the extent of her duplicity. The domino effect of Karen's downfall was swift. Financial instability set in as overdue bills and mounting fines made headlines, while trusted allies and board members distanced themselves from her. In what seemed like a cruel twist of fate, her personal life began to mirror the collapse of her professional facade. Her long-standing relationships faltered under the strain of public disgrace, and whispers of divorce and personal bankruptcy grew louder. At a public meeting intended to address the HOA's future, Karen's attempts to salvage her reputation fell flat. The evidence of her misdeeds was irrefutable, and any semblance of her former bravado was replaced by visible signs of defeat. Her once commanding presence was now reduced to anxious gestures and stammered explanations, as the community looked on with a mix of pity and satisfaction. In the midst of her crumbling world, Karen was forced to confront the reality that her methods of intimidation and manipulation had not only failed the community, but had also betrayed her own integrity. The personal losses, financial, relational, and social, served as a stark reminder that power wielded without accountability ultimately destroys its wielder. For Ethan and the rest of the community, Karen's downfall was a moment of poetic justice. It symbolized the end of an era of fear and authoritarian rule, replacing it with a renewed commitment to fairness and transparency. As Karen faded into obscurity, her journey became a cautionary tale, a stark demonstration that no one is above the law, and that the misuse of power will always be met with consequences. In the quiet aftermath, as neighbors rebuilt their lives and restored their sense of community, the fall of Karen marked a turning point. The personal ruin she endured was not merely a punishment for past misdeeds, but a necessary step in the healing process for a community long held hostage by tyranny. Her once formidable image, now tarnished and forgotten, served as a constant reminder that true leadership is built on accountability, not on coercion or deceit. In the months following the dramatic upheaval, the neighborhood transformed into a haven of genuine community spirit and renewed trust. The oppressive cloud of fear and subjugation had finally lifted, replaced by a vibrant atmosphere of mutual respect and camaraderie. Neighbors who had once exchanged wary glances now gathered freely at block parties, impromptu potlucks, and long, leisurely evenings on their porches, sharing stories of resilience and laughter. The scars left by the corrupt HOA were slowly healing, as everyone embraced the opportunity to rebuild the community based on fairness and transparency. Ethan, now a local hero, could be seen almost every morning on his porch, a symbol of the collective triumph over tyranny. The bright glow of his porch lights, once a lightning rod for controversy, now shone as a beacon of defiant freedom. Each flicker was a reminder that standing up for what was right had not only reclaimed his vacation home, but also restored dignity to the entire neighborhood. During one particularly lively neighborhood gathering, as twilight painted the sky in warm hues, a playful mood took over. Amid laughter and the clinking of glasses, one neighbor, ever the joker, approached Ethan with an envelope. With a mischievous grin, the neighbor theatrically declared it a new violation notice, for reasons so absurd it defied logic, perhaps for excessive porch optimism. The crowd burst into laughter, and Ethan's eyes twinkled with both amusement and quiet vindication. He accepted the envelope with a light chuckle and, after a brief pause to soak in the moment, quipped with a knowing smile, "I guess even the HOA can't resist trying to set rules for happiness." The remark, delivered with a perfect blend of humor and finality, resonated throughout the gathering as a definitive mic-drop moment. It was as if the entire neighborhood was collectively saying that the old, unjust ways were now a thing of the past. As the evening drew to a close, the scene felt almost cinematic. A community reclaimed, the oppressive regime dismantled, and a shared future filled with promise. The final image lingered, Ethan's porch, aglow against the deepening night, a silent yet powerful testament to the resilience of those who refuse to be cowed by corruption. With a final satisfied smile, Ethan turned off his porch light, the soft click echoing like a punctuation mark at the end of a long, arduous chapter. In that quiet, reflective moment, the entire neighborhood understood that true power lies in unity, and that every once oppressive rule can be overcome when a community stands together. The final curtain fell on an era of fear, making way for a new dawn, one where laughter, justice, and freedom reign supreme. Fade to black.